look back in hindsight, everything is 2020. In hindsight, we make mistakes, we're learning from it. In hindsight, be yesterday and your tomorrow. In hindsight, it's so much clearer now.
Hey, so welcome to Hindsight the Podcast. I'm your host, Lee Jones, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with a true pioneer in the personal coaching field, Laura Berman Fortgang. With over 25 years of experience, Laura has become an international figure renowned for her expertise in guiding individuals toward finding meaning, purpose, and satisfaction in their lives. Not only is she a best-selling author, but Laura has also graced the stages of TEDx, various national morning shows, and even shared her insights on platforms like Oprah. Her methodology, I know you had some more, but we'll let you bring those up. Her methodology, particularly her now what approach to career transition, has impacted countless lives and industries from homemakers to Fortune 500 companies. Today, I dive into her journey, her insights, and her latest ventures, the A-List Coach Business Mentoring Program. Welcome. How are you doing, Laura?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. So what did I mess up in the intro?
Oh, no, you didn't mess anything up. I was just anticipating. I was like, it's going to be Oprah.
I know that's right. You got a lot of good stuff. So where are you calling in from?
I am in the New York area. I'm like 15 miles outside of New York. So I'm really a Jersey girl.
Oh, so born and raised?
Born in Brooklyn. Grew up for several years in Venezuela until I was 12.
Oh, wow.
Thanks to my dad's work. And then a Jersey girl from then on.
Okay. How was Venezuela?
Venezuela at the time was was functioning as a whole democracy. It was like rich and poor, no middle class, but
right.
I, was on the side of some privilege there and led a very, very nice life in Venezuela. In fact, it was a bit of a culture shock to come back to the United States, and I had to learn how to use a dishwasher. Like, what?
I know that's right. Oh, that's good. That's good. It's always good to go somewhere and be able to benefit from all of the pleasures of that area. That's always a good way to travel and live if you have to live there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it made me appreciate the United States upon coming back, but also just like, it was just I'm so glad that happened to me. It wasn't my choice. It was my parents' choice, but just to grow up in a different culture, have to learn how to be sensitive to your surroundings, learning a different language, like it served me incredibly well my whole life.
Okay, so this is hindsight, and one of the things I do like to talk about, you said this was your parents' choice and stuff, but I do like to talk about choices, what you chose, and how that choice kind of affected your life, whether good or bad, right? So if you could just to get the show kicked off, if you could think of like one choice that you had to make throughout your life that was super impactful, something that you remember right now, what would that be?
The choice to leave my dream aspiration to be on Broadway. That's why I stayed in the New York area. Like my parents would not support me getting a theater degree. So I went to college for communications and then moved to New York City to become a Broadway star. Wow. And, waited on tables, did lots of odd jobs.
Right.
I did get my union classification and, I worked professionally, but like I just hit a point where I was like, wow, I could do this for 10 more years and still not be on Broadway. And so probably the biggest decision I made in my life was to say, okay, I'm done with that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what else I was going to do. And I found my way to coaching, and wow, that worked out.
That was my next question. So you made that choice, and how, looking back, do you still have any if I'd have gave it a month, maybe I could have hit that Broadway stage.
I have no regrets.
No regrets.
No, I mean, I've definitely seen some of the people that I came up with, who stayed in there longer, finally had their day on Broadway, but I'm just happy for them. I have no regrets, no jealousy.
Yeah.
I can see, like, in hindsight, you can see how perfect it was that I had that experience, because I went on to speak, like how I grew my coaching practice at a time when nobody knew what coaching was in the early 90s.
Right.
I spoke anywhere that would have me speak. And I thank my years of being on stage for having a comfort level with that. Like, it was never uncomfortable to like speak in public or to be on a podcast or to be on TV. Like, that part was taken care of. And so
Right.
I'm forever grateful that I had that experience. And as hard as it was to say, this isn't working out the way I want, I can now, in hindsight, see it as one of the best choices I ever made.
That's pretty good. That's awesome. You touched on everything I wanted to know. So the next question I was going to ask you was, how did that experience, or how did that choice, or how did that, just that desire to be on Broadway, and then having to kind of make that shift, how did that prepare you? But you've already answered it. So, prepare you for what it is that you're doing now. So you took a lot of those lessons and you've applied them throughout your life and become very successful at doing so.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it too was right place, right time.
Okay.
No one in the world hadn't heard of this yet. There were articles being written. I was one of the first to get published with a book. And so that led me to, be on TV and everything. And like I said, like, I had the training to do that. Like, none of that
Right.
was lost on me. But really, so much of being an actor is ego, and part of what I wanted out of being an actor, in hindsight, I'm sorry to keep pulling that word back at you, but all my lessons were in hindsight. I was 10 years into my coaching career when I realized, like, what I had really wanted out of being an actor was not the applause and how fun it is to, wear costumes and embody somebody else and all that. But I wanted people to go in the theater, have an experience that changed their life.
Wow.
So whether they saw like difficult relationships on stage and it made them work on theirs, or just having the joy, or maybe crying that day and they needed a good cry. So what I really wanted out of the theater was for people to be transformed by the experience of being in the theater. So in hindsight, to see that I'm doing something that invites people to transform their lives, like, it was a through line, like it was there, although I was not conscious of it at the time that I was an actor. I wasn't conscious of that,
Right.
You just sense the energy of an audience, and you know that they're with you or not with you. And, but I didn't have the awareness of why that was so meaningful until 10 years when I was out.
So what inspired you to develop the Now What methodology? And was that your first leap into the coaching?
That's my third book.
Okay.
And so my original entree into coaching was, get people from A to B. They have a goal and they want to reach that goal. Then it developed into help. I was sort of like the secret weapon for executives. They would call me their secret weapon. And I would, help them with their leadership style, strategy, thinking, and work-life balance became a big buzzword. And then 9/11 hit. And 4 days after 9/11, my phone, back when phones rang, my phones were ringing off the hook. Like, I thought it was the end of my business because the world had just been destroyed. But it was the beginning of now what? I had people saying life is too short. Anything can happen. I got to take the back burner dream and put it on the front burner. I need to do something more meaningful. I don't like my job. And I was traveling a lot in those days for speaking engagements, and travel was suspended. So I could commit to people for a 90-day period. I say, well, I know I can predict that planes aren't flying for the next 90 days, so I can work with you.
Right.
And it turned out that I was working with people for 90 days. 45 days, we kind of figure out some insights. 45 days more, we're starting to put it into play, like what they're going to do with their life and being strategic about it. And one day my book agent called me, what are you up to? And I told her, after I wrote the second book, I was like, I'm never writing another book. And yet I told her, oh my God, I'm working with these people 45 days. They figure it out. 45 days. We're putting it into play. And she's like, oh, that sounds like a book. And that's how Now What got born. Like, so I literally put 5 beta testing groups together. Every week I plucked out a chapter for them to read. And I was coaching these people and having them read my book in progress. And that's how the Now What methodology came to be. And now it's like 20 some odd years of helping people figure out what to do with their life without ever looking at their resume. We don't look at the resume.
Nice. So you touched on 20 something years later, but how has the now what evolved over the years from that humble beginnings to now?
Sure. I mean, it's evolved. It's evolved with technology in the sense that it used to only be available, like you had to work with me. Now, we've got the ebook, we've got online courses, so technologically, I even have under construction an AI clone who can help you with the now what process. Ooh, spilling the tea. And, I grew up with it. This all comes from growing up with a father who did not like their job. Like he hated his job. He made our household miserable because he was miserable. I would beg my father, like, please don't worry about paying for college. Please find something that'll make you happy. And in the end, he was treated very unfairly. He was let go 18 months before retirement. He had been with this company 32 years, right? So 18 months short of his full vetted retirement, they got rid of him.
Wow.
And it was devastating to my father. And so really, like, working so that people don't have to suffer to make a living, that's been my go-to thing. And it's definitely influenced by growing up with my dad.
Wow. Now, you already gave me two of them. I'm still going to ask you this question.
Okay.
You gave me, Broadway was one, 9/11 was two. But can you share a pivotal moment in your career, reinvention journey, a pivotal choice that you had to face? So while you was doing your own reinvention journey.
Yes.
Right.
I think every 3 years I have to face a pivotal decision. Like I seem to reinvent every 3 years. So whether it's, was 9/11,
excuse me,
that fell in my lap as a reinvention. But, things just change and move so fast. So about every 3 years, I have to decide, what am I giving up and what am I going towards? And, I'm surprised that I've never, other than my marriage, I've never done anything this long. So I'm constantly surprised that I'm still in the game. I'm trying to think if there was another pivotal one, but I can tell you that for a short period, maybe 5 years, I didn't give up my regular coaching, but I had a moment where my daughter was starting to follow me into the musical theater world. She was only like 11 or 12 at the time. And I was starting to feel like I didn't want to be one of those stage moms that push their child because they never had their own moment like that.
Right.
So just to make sure that I wasn't doing that, I did a show. Like I hadn't done a musical in 17 and a half years. So I did a musical. Oh. I played this crazy character that lived in a trailer park. And I had this inspiration after the show was done to call the author and ask her what kind of leeway I had with this character that she created. She's like, whoa, you can't. It's part of a play. Like, you can't. So I invented my own character. And I, for 5 years, inside of my coaching world, I kind of did this on the side. I did a one-woman show as this character, Life Coach Lurleen. And Life Coach Lurleen lived in a trailer in Florida. She read the People magazine. She could not understand why the People in People magazine are so miserable when they have it all, and she's got nothing. So this one-woman show was all about how Lurleen can change the life of all the celebrities. And I would put people through the paces of a self-help thing, very homespun, very kind of like, I don't know if you have kids, but there's the books of Amelia Bedelia, who always confuses words and doesn't get things right. So that was kind of Life Coach Lurleen. And it started to take off, but I finally got to a point where I was doing a show in Wisconsin, 4 strangers, no more friends in the audience. We graduated past that stage.
Right.
And I was like, wow, this needs so much work. I don't know if I want to do this full time. And that was the end of Life Coach Lurleen. But, that was a hoot. So that was another, pivotal distraction maybe. But
yeah.
But probably the best compliment I got when I was doing that one-woman show is I had a woman come up to me after a show and she said, I would never go to a self-help thing if you paid me. And boy, you got me. Like something changed in my life because of this show. Right. So I was like, there we go. Right back to my whole thing around theater is Like, have people have an experience, have them transform their lives. And that time it was through comedy.
That's interesting because you had a plan, or you had an idea for this character, and you went and you pursued it. You did it on your own. Did you learn anything while you were doing that one person stage show that you carried on into your coaching practice?
There's a lot of courage when you play a character, right? Because it's not
Yeah,
you.
right.
Right. So when I could speak through this character, I think I was very courageous, and that followed me back into my coaching, like just being more truthful and calling people on their stuff and not being afraid. And also it taught me, like, there's this saying that I will offer to my clients often. I'll say, if everyone thinks you're crazy, you're on the right track.
Oh, shoot.
And boy, everyone thought I was crazy. My publisher was like, "You're what? You're what? You're going to play? What are you doing?" Like, everyone thought I was nuts until they didn't think I was nuts. Till they saw
Right.
that it was working. I just didn't, it was just getting too reminiscent of the theater lifestyle. Like, oh, I'm going to be on the road. I'm going to be doing
Yeah.
shows. I'm going to be alone in hotels. I don't want to do this. This is why I left show business. So
Gotcha.
I left Lurleen on the side of the road, and her leopard pants still live in my closet.
Hey, so are any of those shows? Do you have it anywhere online, YouTube or something like that?
You know what? Maybe I'll let it come out again. You'll have a hard time finding it. Everyone looks her up, because I ran for office in 2017 and 2019. I ran for New Jersey State Assembly.
Okay.
And I made those videos disappear.
The life of a politician.
Yes. I had to make her disappear, because how was I going to explain that? So maybe we'll resurface them. Maybe you're inspiring me to resurface Life Coach Lurleen.
So I was going someplace else, but now you talk about you ran for office.
Yes.
How was that experience, and what led you to want to run for office?
Well, it was very personal.
Okay.
I don't mean private, just personal. Like, I have a child with epilepsy, and our drugs were starting to cost upwards of $1,000 a month for a single drug.
Yeah.
And what insurance would cover and not cover, and da 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 da. So if you look at what year it was, there was not a big belief in our healthcare system staying, being improved. And as it was not good.
Right.
And I just felt so helpless that I was like, you know what? I'm going to run for office and affect policy. And I got pats on the head from a lot of people that were like, "How nice, honey. You should run for Board of Education, or you should run for town council." And my answer was, I'm not interested in potholes. I'm interested in policies.
Right.
And so I ran in a very difficult district to win. I was a first timer. I didn't know what I was doing. But I started to have people come out for me. So when it came around 2 years later, it made more sense. My eyes were open.
Right.
So I did it again. I lost both times, but it's really okay. I learned so much. I learned that I'm not sure if I want to do it.
It's a hard job.
It's very, very tough.
Yeah.
But, again, a place where there was the potential to transform lives, right? So, I hope I'm demonstrating, like, through my own story, that there's a through line to everybody's story. And that's what I help people do, is find that through line and figure out what's going to be the next iteration of that.
Right. Okay, so here's a good one. So now I'm going to put your coaching hat on. And how can individuals, like, navigate career transitions effectively, especially in today's, like, rapidly, like, the world's changing crazily. Now I know that's not a word, but I wanted to say that anyway. But what are some strategies that they can navigate those transitions?
Well, I discourage people from quitting cold turkey. Like, if you can avoid it, like, don't do that. It's always easier to get a job when you have a job.
Right.
We've got to be very AI savvy. We already knew that there was a tracking device for resumes and how they track your resume and spew it out, and did it hit the keywords and everything. But now we have to be even more sensitive to that. So, I think the hardest part of any career transition after divorce or illness or getting back to anything, it's just it's so hard to be patient. It's just so hard to be patient and to create a structure for your days so that you don't cave in on yourself,
Right.
So like, what time you're getting up, what time you're going to bed, that you have something fun to look forward to every day. Like, how are you going to discipline yourself to sit in that chair and do applications or,
Yeah.
whatever it is you're doing, if you're growing a business and
Mm-hmm.
making those scary phone calls. So it's, the hardest part is that self-management and self-care during a stressful time, but
Yeah.
people do it.
Yeah, self-management, self-care especially, that is key. I remember when I transitioned from the military into the civilian, and it wasn't that long, right? But there is some anxiety, with the length of time, just not knowing, what's next. Well, for me personally.
Oh, I think that echoes, generally speaking, I think that's accurate.
Right,
There's
right.
the anxiety of not knowing and how long your money's going to last and,
Yeah.
what's it going to be. And, oh, it's not an enviable time.
Right. So I believe it is really, really key that people understand that self-management, or not really self-management, but that healthcare as well. Making sure you're taking care of yourself mentally as you go through these processes, because it could take a while, right? And we definitely need some strategies on how to navigate effectively. So you talked a little, well, you didn't talk a little bit about it at all. I talked a little bit about it, the A-List Coach Business Mentoring Program. Tell me, how did you launch that? And is it launched already?
Yes, that is a newer pivot. I guess we can call it that.
I'm hitting all these pivots, and maybe we'll come back and you'll fill in some more meat as we go along.
I'm a pivot person, always pivoting. I'm still doing now what I'm still helping people figure out their careers, but when I'm working with people, I often end up helping them start a business, right? A lot of people
Right.
want to work for themselves. So I've learned a lot about between being a business owner myself and helping a lot of people start businesses. And there's a statistic that came to my attention a couple of years ago from the International Coaching Federation, which is one of the largest bodies that follows coaches. And it was that 82% of coaches close up shop within 2 years. Like, they just don't make it. They don't start making money and they just give up. And that statistic just didn't sit well with me. So once again, I'm like, what can I do about it? So I started what I call the A-List Coach, and I help coaches really differentiate themselves in the marketplace so that they can prosper.
Yeah.
So that's how that came to be. And I've been, visible in the coaching world for as long as I've been a coach. So,
Right.
That it was easy to turn back to my people and be like, okay, how can I help? So I help beginners build their businesses, and I help people who've been at it for a long time start scaling their businesses and making them bigger.
One thing I do want to do is apologize for all this choke. I got a little in my throat, so it's trying to drink some coffee to minimize it a little bit. But what advice do you have for coaches looking to establish their brand and leverage their expertise?
Well, it's really important that you know what result you create for people. Like, so many coaches are generalists. Like, they can help people do lots of different things. And there's some benefit to that, but it doesn't work in the crowded marketplace that we have now. Like, you have to really say, okay, this is the result that I create. And I help coaches create their own unique methodology, like my Now What methodology, right? That's my basis for this. It's like, well, what's your methodology and for what, to achieve what outcome? And how do we then deliver that methodology? Is it a course? Is it a book? Is it a TEDx talk? So because I've done all those things, I help coaches take that next step and figure out where that methodology is going to live and how they're going to get it out in the world. And that's how we scale their business.
TEDx, what did you talk about, and how was that experience? How was building up to that TEDx talk for you?
It was very exciting, of course. And I will say, for anyone who's thinking of doing a short talk, it is harder to do a short talk than it is to do a long talk. Way harder. Like, when I do presentations, I don't normally script it word for word, but if you do a TEDx, you have to script it word for word, because you've got to make those 12 minutes or 10 minutes or 18 minutes, whatever they're giving you. And I had 12.
Right.
And I remember one of my mentors saying to me, like, if there's something that you feel like no one else knows but you. Like, what is that? What do you want to share? And that was my basis for figuring out what was I going to share.
Okay.
And I wanted to talk about this life story process that I came up with. Like, I told you, I don't look at people's resumes.
Right.
Right. And when you say you're going to help me change careers, you're not going to look at my resume. Yeah, I don't want to know your resume.
Right.
Because a resume is just your chronological business case for why you're right for the next step of what you've been doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you're doing a complete reinvention, your resume doesn't tell you anything. So
Right.
I help people with their life history and their life story, and we find the clues to their future. So that's what I wanted to do for my TEDx talk. So I didn't name it. It ended up being called How to Find Your Dream Job Without Ever Looking at Your Resume. That you can find on YouTube.
Okay.
We're just shy of 2 million views. Come on, people. Let's get it over the top.
I know. I'm going to jump on it.
And, you know, it was, I had a very interesting experience. Like, the venue was outdoors,
Okay.
and it was during the day, and the wind was blowing, and you can hear these chains like trying to hold the tent up. And
Goodness.
and so I'm doing this talk, fighting with this noise, fighting with the wind.
Mm-hmm.
And you memorize this thing, you've practiced this thing. I get off the stage and they're like, the sound didn't work. We're going to have to redo yours.
Oh.
Yeah. So your reaction was exactly my reaction. Like, oh my gosh, I just went through this. How could I ever do this again? And yet it was the best thing that could have happened, because then my next turn was in the evening. The wind had died down.
Mm-hmm.
The lighting was better because you had a spotlight on the red carpet, the red circle that they use for TEDx. And the audience understood their mission, like, as if you'd heard it for the first time, laugh in the same places, So it turned out to be a beautiful, video and just a great experience. But yeah, that moment where they're like, yeah, that whole thing just failed. Like, oh no.
That is awesome. That is really awesome. So you got to memorize this, right? You said it's scripted, but you have to memorize it. How long is the talk for? 16?
I had 12 minutes.
12
Mine was
minutes.
12 minutes. Yes.
Okay.
And it was scripted to the last breath. Like even when I was in the theater, you took liberties, but you don't take liberties when you have to make those 12 minutes. Right. So, I had some help. Like, I had someone help craft the words.
Yeah.
I wrote it. They helped craft it better. And, the key to rehearsal is to do it so many times that when you get up there in that moment, you're not really focused on the script, because you own it, like you've already, it's in you. So it shouldn't be too crazy unless you forget. It's cool.
I've talked to a few people who have done TEDx, and I thought maybe you have a teleprompter or something like that. So it's really amazing to be able to get up there. You have some history and some background in theater and, roles and parts and memorizing things, right? But it's really fascinating to get out there and make those points, hit those moments where you get the audience to know their roles, right? What was the key thing? You had 12 minutes. What was the key thing that you wanted to convey? And I know you kind of said it in the title, but that you wanted to convey in that TEDx talk to your audience.
I wanted people to know that everyone has a purpose, that it's baked into you. It's kind of in your DNA, that, a purpose isn't like something you do. It's something that you are. Like, you serve a purpose by who you are. And I demonstrated for people through the stories that I told that, kind of this through line that I was talking about, that it's in your life. You just may never have known that you could have made a career out of it, or that every career you did in hindsight had an element of this. And once you know what that is, like, you'll make choices in life very differently, because you'll always have a grounding point for, like, a criteria. I call it your criteria for happiness. Like, you'll have criteria and you'll be like, nope, that's not for me. Yes, this is for me.
Right.
And so that's what I want for people, is to have that core criteria, so that you don't have to worry about making a mistake, because it's not a mistake if it's aligning with who you are.
I was just having this conversation with someone, and we probably talked about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and you really summed it up in like 3 sentences. So, just having that core, right? And you just said it again. What's the word you used? That through line?
The through line. I call it your life blueprint, actually, but it's the through line to your life.
Exactly, right. And that just helps you with those choices.
Yes.
That you, because we all have some crazy number like 34,000 choices or decisions you make a day, right? And those ones challenge whatever your through line, if you figure out what that is, can answer them for you, so you won't go off track. So thank you for saying that. I'll keep
You're
that.
welcome.
Yeah. So throughout your career in coaching, and you've told me a lot of successes.
Yes.
What obstacles have you faced, and how did you overcome those?
Oh, there have been many, many obstacles. I mean,
just give me one.
Let's take COVID, right?
Big one. Yeah.
And, and I'm not the only one, but COVID was a big obstacle for people. There were so many people who had to pivot to online. I was already online. So few. There were, people that had to pivot to working from home. I was doing free classes as a public service to how to work from home efficiently and not get distracted at home.
Right.
Because I've been working from home forever. But it was a pivot because so many types of work disappeared. Right. So there weren't conferences, there weren't gatherings, there weren't, so I had to operate like I had to make decisions based on what if it never came back. And so I started reinventing if it never came back. And that's where I finally started doing online courses and more online aspects to what I was doing. So that's one obstacle. I've hit the obstacle of ageism, I will say, where I've lost a major contract with a retailer because I was no longer in their age demographic. And it's like, wow, really? I see people my age shopping at your store, including me. Right. So there's always been obstacles. I mean, from not having a mailing list that's big enough or whatever, there's always been obstacles to things that I wanted to do. But you get to decide if, you're going to find a way around those obstacles or if you're going to be stopped. And I keep going. Energizer Bunny.
What gives you that resiliency? What gives you that motivation to not stop and to keep going? What clicks in you?
Sometimes it's survival mode, right? You're like, you still have to be putting food on the table. So there you go.
Right.
But then, I try to keep, like Oprah will always say, how would she prays and she'll be like, use me. Like how can you use me? Right. So I will often think of like, how can I be useful?
Yeah.
That's how running for office happened. That's how all these other things happen. So, these are not easy times when you hit the obstacles. I don't want to let anyone think that I'm like, a super bouncing ball and balance. I bounced back dozens and dozens of times, but it's not pretty.
Right.
It's not always pretty.
Right.
You know.
Okay. So give me a good success story from your coaching journey.
A good success story from my coaching journey. Wow, it's like they're all flooding through my head.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna go with the kind of an old story, but so I was working with a woman who was a recruiter, and she'd never made more than $50,000 a year as a recruiter.
Okay.
And we worked together 18 months. This is before I'd started doing the 90-day thing, and she went from $50,000 a year to $500,000 a year. So 10x'd her income because she started seeing herself differently of like what was possible for her.
Yeah.
Where she was afraid to ask for, there in recruiting, you can be on retainer or you can be, just each time there's a job search that needs to be done, you're on contract. So she decided she wanted to be a retainer person. So that meant asking for more money. That meant, standing up for herself. That meant negotiating. So she did that, and she, to this day, she's in her 80s now.
Mm.
And she thanks me for her lifestyle and her retirement in her faraway place where she lives.
I know that's right. That is amazing. Hold on. That is an.
Unamazing. Yeah.
Yeah. I gotta do
AN.
that in case
That's an AN.
my mom's listening, right?
Was your mom an English teacher?
No, but she used to always correct me, when I was anyway, yeah, because I like to write. And I'll write fine, but when I speak the way I speak, right? So
Right.
she would always correct me.
But it's hard to say unamazing story,
yeah.
right?
No. So, how do you maintain a healthy work-life balance? Amidst the demands of professional and your personal life. What do you do there?
Well, since I've always worked from home, that's been an easier thing to do. Like when you
Okay.
don't have a commute, you're like, that cuts off hours of your day that's spent commuting, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my husband and I both have worked from home. And even when our kids were little, it was like the best thing for us to get the most maximum balance in our life and see our kids.
Right.
I shut off the light in my office, usually 5 o'clock, sometimes 6, and that's it. And it really takes that discipline of like, your business, your work will grow if you keep paying attention to it. It'll just keep growing. So, the workload keeps growing is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I got you.
So there has to come a point where you just go, oh, that's it. Cut off. Start again tomorrow.
Right.
And I find I'm more effective in the morning anyway. So I'd rather get up at 5:30 in the morning and do something than try to work into the night. So work-life balance, like there's no, like balance is a tricky word because it means that it always stays, like this, but a kid gets sick and, you're off balance, or somebody loses their job and you're off balance. So there's no balance. It's like an integration. It's making sure that you give time to everything, right? So I don't work out enough, but I think about it every day. I integrate it into my thinking.
I definitely don't. I think I really dropped off once I got out of the military. So now I'm trying to get back because as you get older, you start to feel things more, right? So, so anyway, I'm starting to work out just a little bit more. And my dog, he takes me out every morning and every evening. So he makes sure that I get my walks in.
My dog makes sure I walk too. So yay, high five.
So tell me a little bit more about, what do you focus on most now? The now what or the A-list?
This year it's the A-list. This year we're really giving a push to the A-list, but I tend to get one-on-one clients with now what and group stuff with the A-list right now. That's the balance at the moment.
And what's the 90 days? Walk me through the 90, not the whole thing, but walk me through like what the 90-day sessions or groups, what that is.
When I work with people, so 90 days is the Now What program. So the Now What program, we're going to get you in touch with who you are and what you want so that you can start taking steps to make a career transition.
Okay.
So I'd say 3/4 of the time is spent navel gazing, like we're, thinking about discovering yourself, looking at your life story, kind of hindsight work a little bit.
Right.
And then the last third is starting to test that idea in the world, right? So we've got all this information about your criteria for happiness. We look at, how do we get your purpose out into the world? What are the list of jobs that you might possibly do? Right. And then we send you on a research trip, to like, okay, so you think you want to be a teacher, you think you want to be in film, and you think you want to work in finance. Okay, so go find people that do those things. Okay. And start getting, the feasibility study. Like, do you really want to do it? Do you have to go back to school? What is it going to take? Where's the starting point? Are you willing to go through that? So once people do that research project, we start to find that, something will start picking up traction. Something will start, like the doors will start opening. Right. And that's the door we're going to go through. And so usually by the time I leave people after the 90 days, they're well on their way to sending out resumes or making connections and, going for their next thing.
One thing that I do want to go back to, Now What, and I know there's some other words, Now What was your third book? What were your first two books? And then how many total books have you written?
The first book was Take Yourself to the Top. by America's #1 career coach. I was discovered by Warner Books, and I had a male editor who was the sports and business editor.
Okay.
And my first book sounds like a guy wrote it, because he really influenced my the way I was tough in that book. So I call that my book for guys. Take yourself to the top. Second book was Living Your Best Life, which sounded awfully lot like Oprah's Live Your Best Life, right? Yeah, I asked them not to name it that, but the publisher had the final say.
Okay.
And the Oprah people came after me for it.
Really?
I survived. Yeah,
wow.
They didn't own the trademark to Live Your Best Life, so I survived that.
Okay.
Third book was Now What? I have 5 books in total.
Okay.
So the fourth one was the little book on meaning after I became an interfaith minister. That informed that. And the fifth one was called The Prosperity Plan.
You know why I like talking to you today?
Why? Because I do something different every 2 minutes.
Every time I ask you a question, you just give me a little bit of a glimpse in another direction. It just shows me how dynamic you are. So you said interfaith minister?
Yes, interfaith minister.
All right, let's talk about that.
Yeah, sure. So that was in 2006 sideline. This was, also, 5 years after 9/11, there was a lot of confusion about what Islam was, and people afraid of people of the Muslim faith. And
right.
I had all my 9/11 clients wanting to do something more meaningful, and I was like, well, what would be more meaningful for me? And so I entered into a 2-year seminary. It's not as serious or as heavy duty as if I was going to become a priest or a rabbi, where you study for 12 years and you speak Aramaic and Hebrew and Latin. Right. And, it wasn't like that. It was pretty light, but it was a 2-year course of study where we studied 14 major religious traditions and, had some writing and some other things you needed to do. What a cool experience. And by the way, this was the One Spirit Seminary in New York City, if anyone's listening who wants to check it out. And it was such an amazing experience, because each month you had to immerse yourself in whatever religion we were studying. Right. So I went to mosques and I went to Hindu temples, and I would ask people to, take me in. Can I eat with you? Can I understand your practices and your rituals? And, running for office, I got to do that too. Right. Ramadan and breaking the fast every day. And I even, I was raised Jewish, but not very religious. So when we came to Judaism, I rediscovered my own religion. It was like, wow, what a cool set of rituals and traditions. So it was a beautiful experience. I started doing weddings for people. I still do them. I do 1 or 2 weddings a year as a gift. If someone asks me and I have a connection to them, it's a gift. I don't charge money for it. And it just taught me so much. And I often wear this medallion that has many religious symbols on it. And I wear it especially when I travel, because I'm like, I will borrow all the gods to keep me safe while I'm traveling. And I get people asking me oh, do you know what that is? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And they go, oh, well, that's my religion. And so it's been this incredible bridge to beautiful conversations with strangers in airports and on airplanes. Yeah. And it doesn't make me an expert in any one of those religions, but just to have some understanding and for people to realize that you're willing to look into what their life is like and to understand their culture. I mean, it's really something the world needs more and more, as we see with the circumstances. And, and it's just been, it still follows me as something, really magical and fun that I got to do. And I use it as a connector. Yeah.
I tell you what, that through line is apparent. So as many branches that we see that you've done in your life, Laura, you see that through line, that centerpiece, and just wanting to connect, wanting to do good by people. And that's just an amazing story. I took one semester, I think not even a semester, I took a class on world religions, right? Because you want to understand, right?
Yeah.
So instead of just going by the words of your religion, right, and dismissing everybody else's, right, just to have a better understanding. So I definitely commend you on that. I'm already married, so I won't be reaching out.
Hopefully there won't be any conscious uncoupling either, so that's good. Ceremonies for conscious uncoupling.
Oh man, so I've asked you a few questions, Laura, about different things, and I appreciate you opening up and telling, sharing your story. But what have I not brought up that you'd like to talk about a little bit today?
Oh my gosh, we hit so many wonderful stops along the choo-choo train of my life here. Let's talk about kids. Do you have any kids?
Yes, they're grown. They're all grown.
Mine are in their 20s. I'd
My
say almost grown because I have two still,
my youngest is 25.
Oh, my youngest are twins and they're 23 and they're finishing college in the next year or two because of COVID.
Right,
We took
right,
some time
right.
off. So that was a trip. What do you learn in hindsight about having kids? What do you learn?
Oh wow. What you really learn, and I think a lot of times, once you become, and I'm not a grandparent, but in hindsight, what you learn is all the mistakes or choices that weren't the best choices that you've made along the way as a parent, right? And as a grandparent, you're like, why are you so nice? Why are you this way? Why are you that way? Because you've learned, through being a parent. And as many books and as many shows and things like that kind of talks about what it is to be the right parent, it can't really tell you how to be the right parent, or the best parent, because everyone
Well,
has so
also
many.
it can't erase your history. You know what I
It
mean?
can
Like
erase your history, yeah.
you have to live through the hiccups of parenthood as you
Mhm.
learn about yourself, and because you come up against
That's
problems
true.
with your children where your parents had problems with you. Like,
Yes.
and how do you consciously not repeat history, right, and do it differently?
Right.
And it's funny, I was just reading about grandparenting yesterday. I'm not anywhere near being a grandparent either. And like, it's people joke about like, oh, it's easy to be a grandparent because you just give them back. But this person was like, no, that's not why it's easy to be a grandparent. It's easy to be a grandparent because you already made the mistakes and you get to correct the mistakes
Yep.
with your grandchildren. And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's any escaping mistakes. I don't think there's any such thing as a perfect parent because, I mean, as I've seen or observe, like especially with parenting a girl, right? So either let's say you're a working mom or you're not a working mom. Your kid's gonna have a problem with you as a working mom because you weren't there for this thing or the other thing, but then they'd have a problem with you if you weren't a working mom because you didn't show them what's possible for women. So
it's a lot.
you can't win. You cannot win as a parent. You just cannot win whether we choose these souls really consciously in some other dimension to come in and be with us or it's just random. You just have to know that you have to hold grace for that time when your kid comes back to you and goes, you did this and you did that. And I've already had one of those conversations with my oldest and I sat there and I took it like a champ. And I was like, I totally get it. And that you're about the age that I started to go to therapy. So if you'd like to go to therapy and work some of this out, I'll pay for it.
That is a great message from you as well, Laura. Because a lot of parents, a lot of people, they don't want to acknowledge some of the things, right? I don't remember all the decisions, but I do remember some things that I've done wrong, and it still haunts me today. And I believe that maybe they've forgotten about it, right? I don't know, but it still bothers me. But my point to that whole thing is you accepted it. You let her say her piece. It was your daughter, right?
It was my oldest son. It was my son.
Your son. You let him say his piece, and you accepted it, right? And that is important for just the overall relationship. You know. And anyway,
because if you fight back, like you're just denying their experience, right? So
exactly.
Oh, but it was hard. I mean, after I'd taken about an hour of it, I was like, can we talk about like what I overcame to be the parent that I was, but he wasn't interested in that. So I just,
good.
He had to have his moment.
Yeah. Good stuff. Hey, so you got 5 books total. Where can we get these books?
You can still find them on Amazon. So Amazon is the best place to go. You won't find them in a bookstore, but because they're aging. Okay. But you can get them online and tell me about it. Come find me and let me know how it went for you.
Absolutely. And how can the listeners reach out to you or learn more about you online. Do you have a
Easiest thing is if you can spell the name, you can find me. LauraBermanFortgang.com.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you forget and you look up Laura Berman, you'll find me and Dr. Laura Berman, the sex doctor. I'm not her. So there you go.
Yeah, and when you type in Laura Berman, that page is all the information. So you've really marketed yourself well. Do you have any tips on that? Because I know you do that probably with your A-list. Do you do any branding tips or anything like that for
Yes, definitely.
just
you know,
one tip. One tip.
one tip. The first thing you have to decide is if you're branding your name or if you're branding a company.
Okay.
Right? Because I have two companies, the A-list coach and Now What Coaching, but I also branded my name because it's just easier to say, like, look for Laura Berman Fortgang. And when you go to laurabermanfortgang.com, you'll find the others. Like, you'll go off to the other two sites. So I'd say that's the first thing to decide. You know, are you branding yourself? Or are you branding a company? And what is that? What are the implications of that? So there's a tip.
That is a tip that I need to do. I was so impressed. And I know you said, you are a trailblazer in the coaching business, right? So it made sense, but you really, it's out there. It's out there. You type that in there, everyone, Laura Berman, and then if you throw Fortgang in there, that just gives you more information.
Right. That gives you right on target. But if you hit Laura Berman, you'll find me and the sex doctor, and I'm not her.
All right, but it's been a pleasure to learn from you, Laura. Today, hearing about your incredible journey and the wisdom that you gained along the way, from your groundbreaking methodology to your dedication to empowering others. It really exemplifies the spirit of resilience and innovation. And the one thing that I really learned to focus on, and I'm trying to internalize it, is that through line, right? What is my through line? And, if anyone's listening, what is your through line, right? That can really help you to make great decisions, right? And keep you on the trajectory of who you are and who you're probably meant to be. So I thank you so much, Laura. Any last words for us? You got a lot
That
of
was
wisdom.
so well said, Lee. I'm going to leave people with that. That was so well said. That's what I would say. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.